Hello mamas, Laura here, and today we are chatting all about crawling, when you should realistically expect this milestone to happen, and all the weird and wonderful ways our children may begin to move. Enjoy!
Hey mama, I'm sending you wonderful pregnancy vibes. It's time for you to guide you through. Let's take some time for you. It's Pregnancy with Physio Laura.
Hello mamas, and welcome back to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast. Today we are kicking off with episode 3 in our Kids Physio series, diving into the crawling milestone. So Nicole explains the realistic timeframes in which you should expect this to occur, the different ways in which kids may begin to move, and why you don't need to panic if they don't start with hands and knees crawling. Ways that you can change your environment to encourage this movement pattern, and why it is sometimes important to let our kids get a little bit frustrated. Now, this is episode 3 of a 5-part Kids Physio series with the incredible Nicole Pates, a titled paediatric physiotherapist. And if you haven't already listened to the first 2 episodes in this series, please make sure you go back and give them a listen, because we talk about the importance of play when it comes to achieving all of your baby's milestones and ways in which we can find more joy in our parenting journey. We also discuss the different ways to do tummy time and to prevent flattening of your baby's head. There is so much amazing information coming up in this Kids Physio series. So if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast so you don't miss out. In the next few episodes in this Kids Physio series, we'll be covering the down low on baby carriers and whether or not baby toys and activity centres are helpful or harmful. Now remember, we also have 4 bonus videos exclusively available to members inside the Pregnancy Posse, where Nicole talks us through different play ideas for babies aged 0 to 3 months old. Now, this entire podcast series and all our other podcast series, along with all of our exclusive member-only content, is all live right now inside the Pregnancy Posse. So if you'd love to access all the bonus content and listen to or watch this entire podcast series right now, rather than waiting for future episodes to come out, then please do check out the Pregnancy Posse. I have taken my years of experience helping pregnant and postnatal women as a women's health physiotherapist and made this accessible to every wonderful woman online inside the Pregnancy Posse. When you join the Pregnancy Posse, I will guide you week by week through your pregnancy with safe weekly exercise workouts tailored to your exact week of pregnancy. I also do a weekly Q&A session where I answer all of your amazing questions, and there is a wonderful community forum where Posse members all support each other, plus an extensive resources library which will help you avoid Googling all of your pregnant symptoms. Now, I would love to help you have a healthy, active, pain-free pregnancy. So just head over to thepregnancyposse.com to see what the Pregnancy Posse is all about and to trial it for 7 days. Now, let's get into episode 3 of our 5-part Kids Physio series. Let's chat all about timeframes for crawling and remove the pressure off parents if your child doesn't crawl the traditional way straight away. Enjoy!
So let's talk about crawling. That's kind of the next major milestone that a lot of mums and dads will be looking at. So can we unpack why is crawling important? How do we encourage our babes to crawl? And also, I got a lot of questions coming in about how important is it if our babies don't crawl traditionally, i.e. they do the bum shuffle or the commando crawl, or they just skip it and go straight to standing?
Okay, so yes, firstly, let's just start with hands and knees crawling. So the average, so 50% of babies will do this by about 8.5 months, but some babies will do it as early as 5 months and as late as 13 months. Now, from a physio perspective and child health nurse perspective and a GP perspective, we want your baby to be moving on their own around, whether that be bum shuffling, crawling, or cruising by 12 months. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we want them to be starting to engage in independent movement. And by 12 months, we also want them to be happy to be starting to put weight, like to be, if you hold them, that they're happy to sort of stand. They might not be standing by themselves, but they're happy to have that weight through their feet. And like I said, with these things that we talk about, it doesn't necessarily mean something's wrong, but it's just something that where we check in on and we need to do some more support in one area or another. So that's hands and knees crawling. So that's the ranges of when babies will develop that hands and knees crawling skill. But there is data out there by the World Health Organization that shows that not all babies will hands and knees crawl, like in our normal population. Some will bum shuffle and some will commando crawl. And often you see their bubs commando crawl earlier, and they're the really motivated to move ones. Have all these different styles. And I think what the research shows is that the bubs that are like doing all these, that are commando crawling or inchworm crawling or doing these different things, they have a lot of variance in the way that they build up to that skill. And then when if you watch babies really closely, even when they start moving on hands and knees, they change the way they do it all the time. So they start off like robots, and then they become more smoother, and they become almost like daredevils, like climbing off and over things as they get older. Whereas some babies are just happy sitting and then moving and sort of in there sitting, and then they just take off crawling and they never commando crawl. Neither is right or wrong. And I think it comes back to variance in personality and variance in environment. Like, you're not really going to be commandoing all over the place if you have a tiny little apartment, unless you've got a really daredevil child that wants to be in everything. So there's lots of factors to play into that. And there are countries where they don't want babies to crawl because being on the ground isn't safe. And so they want them to sit more, and they will bum shuffle because they sit them a lot. So some babies bum shuffle. Yeah. So in Papua New Guinea, like, there's some data and interesting data because, of snakes and diseases and things, is they don't want them to crawl away. So they don't encourage tummy time, because tummy time, like, the crawling can happen, getting into hands and knees can happen from two ways. One, from being on their tummy and they start to push up, and then they start to sort of do little planks, and then they start to become into that little downward dog, and then they get their knees under it, and they start rocking, and then off they go. Or they can be in sitting, and they're just sitting around. They start to learn to sort of move in and out of, like, sitting like this, and then they sort of move over onto their hands. And often that's when I'll get parents saying, they can't get the leg out. Why can't they get the leg out? And that's because their weight is still in their bum, behind their shoulders, and it's only when they get really adventurous and start to bring their weight over their hands that leg will come out, and then they start rocking, and then they start crawling. And so there's different ways to get to crawling, and that's okay. But yeah, some bubs will bum shuffle because they, a lot of our hip dysplasia bubs that have been sitting, because tummy time's a little bit harder in for some bubs in braces. They sit a lot, and that's normal because they're in their braces, but they develop a really strong core in one direction. Bum shuffling is a natural progression from that. And so when we talk about bum shuffling, and bum shuffling's bad, well, let's find out a little bit more about the child, because it's not necessarily a bad thing. They've figured out a way to move, and they're super keen to move, which is a great thing. I'm more worried about bubs that don't seem to be progressing in their motor skills at all. We like crawling because it gives you weight through your hands and your shoulders, which helps with building body awareness and strength. I am not sold on the research around, like, if my baby doesn't crawl, they'll have poor handwriting. I can't find that anywhere. I don't know where this has come from. I think it's come from therapists, but that's anecdotal, and the population that we see in the clinic is biased because we're seeing kids that need help with things, but we're missing, like, they didn't crawl. But what about all the kids that didn't crawl and still haven't? We don't see them because they haven't presented to clinic. So there's not really any solid research around. I think I found one article about handwriting, and they found there was, like, no difference in, like, the actual stuff. It was just the way they held the pen that was a little bit different. Which was interesting. But then there are some bubs that there's some research that shows that some kids that didn't crawl have a little bit more shoulder play in their joints, and that I don't think you can say crawling caused that. I think possibly it could have they might have been lower tone and more flexible, and so it was harder, and so bum shuffling was a more effective, efficient form of movement for them. So yeah, like that cause and effect thing, I don't like the scaring of parents. If they don't do this, this is going to happen. Like, I always get so frustrated because where did that come from? It's such a black and white statement. Like, why aren't we questioning this as parents? And like, or you go to a class and they're like, oh, you shouldn't sit your baby. Why? Why shouldn't I sit my baby? What do you mean I shouldn't sit my baby? How old? Like, what do you mean? Like, if you sit them, they'll damage this. Where is that evidence? Like, I'm not sitting them at 2 months. Like, they're, 4, 5, 6 months, and they're able to hold that. Then they're a bit wobbly, and I'm right there, and I'm helping them in and out of it. Like, why shouldn't I sit my baby? Or, but they should learn to sit there, get there by themselves. Well, that's fine, but he's so super refluxy and he doesn't want to be on his tummy, so it's going to be really hard for him. Yes. So every baby is different and every situation is different, and the black and white statements really grind my gears. Crawling is fantastic for different things, but also, as I mentioned before, babies aren't going to crawl until that visual system's been through the leap. And there's some beautiful research to show that babies go through phases of using both hands and then using one hand and then both hands and using another hand again, and it like goes in, and that's normal. And crawling will come on at a time where they've gone from using both hands to using one hand again. And that's so like they start to learn to that reach with one hand rather than being all my hands work together. I can work. And so there's like all these little pieces of the puzzle that are coming together. But yeah, I really love crawling, and there's the different ways to get there, and so helping your bub have those experiences through play. But one of the things that comes up, I guess, when people are like, oh, my baby can't get from sitting to crawling, is that I find that we don't change our play environment. So, we've just got a big free floor space, but actually once baby is happy on their tummy and starting to move into these positions, we need to layer up. Like, let's layer up the toys, using couch cushions or aerobic steps, or the cot mattress, or you turned over HelloFresh box, and different things to like create layers in your environment, because that encourages baby to be more explorative. And if I can't, I can sort of see it, where is it? And they explore their body in different ways. But yeah, it's remembering, like, if you were going to the gym, or if you were going to surfing, or you're going to netball training, and you did the same drills over and over again for 6 months, it's pretty boring. So we've got to mix things a little bit. Yeah,
I love that. And I like that you said this is the range at which kids might crawl, because you said 13 months, which I think people would find shocking, because that's normally when you're thinking about walking. So I love that you clarified there's a big variety of normal. And I also, what you were saying before, I really loved as well, because I think there is a lot of future tripping fear with parents, where they are told, well, if your child doesn't do this now, like you said, they're going to have issues in the long term with upper development and handwriting and all sorts of things. And it is so true. It's like you can't draw a parallel just because there's those two factors. Is it the chicken or the egg? Like, maybe your child has hypermobile shoulders and that's why they don't want to crawl, as opposed to they didn't crawl, therefore they now have shoulder, issues.
And they might be a really good diver, or a really good, at something else that like they need that mobility for, or a really good swimmer. Michael Phelps has super hypermobile shoulders. And, it's funny, because if you speak to a lot of elite athletes, they're like, oh, I didn't crawl. But like, we're not picking those up. And that's anecdotal again. But like, that's what I'm saying, is that when therapists are saying this, we're not basing it on long-term research studies. We're basing it on clinical experience, and our population is biased to that. And it'll be really interesting to have those big, and the World Health Organization does have those big health studies, which shows the variance. And obviously that's across different populations. And I think that I come back to is those mini milestones. Are you seeing your baby turn around on a circle, go backwards, start to go onto a plank, start to go into downward dog, and then start to rock? Or are they more happy in sitting, but they can get in and out of sitting, and then they're starting to go that way? Like, if you're seeing that progression, that's great. And it can take like 2 or 3 months or 4 months for those babies to work through that progression. Whereas people go, oh, they've got their own hands and knees, they're going to be crawling tomorrow. Probably not. Some babies, maybe. But again, like, it just depends. And it's not, people go, oh, well, my baby's rocking on hands and knees. How long until they crawl? And average 4 to 6 weeks. Could be longer, could be 3 weeks, but I don't know. That's an average in my clinical experience. Again, not very much research on that. But as long as you can see them progressing through those mini milestones, and that takes the pressure off when someone's like, oh, your baby's 8.5 months, they're not crawling. You're like, yeah, I know, but I can see them getting there. So go and bother somebody else. Yeah. And that's that empowerment that we need as parents, not the fear mongering, oh, well, they're 8 months and they're not crawling, what are you doing about it? No. Whereas I think we can do better in the paediatric space as health professionals, is less fear mongering and more empowerment and understanding of that developmental process.
Yeah, and not just jumping straight to pathologizing children, but understanding how unique they are. And I love what you said about, are they moving somehow? Like, are they just trying to get themselves around? That is what we're looking for. Like, it may not look exactly perfect, but how boring if we all did exactly the same things at exactly the same time.
I know. I say to parents, what about running styles? And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, does everybody have the same running style? Well, no. It's like, but can we all run? Yes. Okay, well, does it matter? Well, if they're getting pain or like, they don't want to or they suddenly stop, like, yeah, then we'd have a look at it. But no, everybody runs differently and everyone has a running style that's unique to their body. And, we can always improve our performance in everything that we do, but do we need to? Is it efficient for me? Is it really gaining anything? Is it going to make them an elite athlete? Probably, I don't know. I don't think so. This might not be a prerequisite to everybody crawling perfectly to be an elite athlete. I don't think so. But I think that strive for perfection in parents comes across everything, not just motor skills, but feeding and sleeping and all of the rest. And I think why are we striving for perfection when nobody is perfect and everybody's different? But I think as a new mum, that first time around especially, you have that I am responsible for my child's XYZ, whereas actually it's no, you're just the helper of your child and the protector, but it's not, it's you can't really explain that until you're in that zone and you can make that shift yourself. So it's hard, but I think giving better information and that empowerment is a nice approach. That's what I'm trying to do.
And I liked your analogy of the lighthouse. You're the lighthouse. Like, you're not captain of the ship. You can't control what they're going to do, but you can steer them. You can help guide them. I had a friend recently, this is a slight side note, but similar. She was saying how, because I'm in the toddler phase where there's some tantrums and things like that. And she was saying you can't take responsibility for their bad behavior. They're just having a moment. It's not your fault. You've not necessarily done anything wrong. But on the flip side, you can't also always take the praise and the responsibility for all their good things either. Like, if they are early milestone achievers or if they, are well behaved in public, you can't go, oh, that's because I'm amazing. So it's about just taking the pressure off.
Yeah. And I think one thing I remember is that, I come back to is that I feel like, and I might be wrong in this, but I feel like we generally, as in Australia, in our culture, do not think our children should be distressed. And distress is really important. Like, it's really important for problem solving. And we all get distressed every day. Like, things happen, you're running late, the lights are red, you're a little bit stressed about that, or, someone says something that you're like a bit sensitive, like, that's you being distressed all day. And unless you've had the experience in the past to work through that and problem solve that, but sometimes we try and take away that distress. And the same thing comes with motor skills. Like, they need to get frustrated to be able to explore their body and test their limits. Every parent will have a different level of frustration that you can tolerate before you jump in. That's okay. I'm not saying you have to let them, and, the more children you have, your frustration tolerance usually increases. But you have to do what's comfortable for you because they're feeding off you as well. So if you think, I can't let them get frustrated to start with, and then I'm only going to do it, that's okay. And I'm not talking about crying. It's, the grunting, like that almost like expression, because that's all they have is their voice to express with. And so you have to decide what level you're comfortable with them being frustrated and what level you're going to jump in with. And then if that level is going to be okay over time, or you feel like you need to step back a little bit further. And it's the same with everything they do in life. But I feel like sometimes with milestones, we're so wanting to be hands-on and do things for them with their legs or move them in, and as they get older, when we really need to step back and let them explore that a little bit more. With non-typically developing kids, I would do a little bit more hands-on, but even still, there's beautiful research to show that the less you can give, the more they can learn themselves. So
I love that. We're in a phase at the moment where it sounded originally like my daughter was being hit or something drastic was happening, but she's just frustrated she couldn't put her gumboots on.
Oh.
So we're going through a frustration with putting shoes on at the moment. And I agree with you, is that you've got to acknowledge what your tolerance as a parent is. But it's a great way for them to problem solve, is to get frustrated and then go, how am I going to do this without mum and dad always having to swoop in and rescue them? Because they're not distressed, they're just frustrated, and it's okay to let them have a little bit of that. Again, whatever you can tolerate too. Some days.
And also, some days you just need to get to daycare.
Yeah.
And just shove the boots on.
Get the gumboots on.
So that's like I think you get in your head, it has to be all the time, and it doesn't have to be all the time at all. And so, it's just that balance, and everybody's balance is different. It's like, well, should I make my baby independent play, or should I play with them? I was like, I don't know, choose what balance fits right for you.
And again, everything you're saying is just coming back to acknowledging your uniqueness, your family values, your child's personality. There is no black and white, one size fits all. You need to tune into your baby. A textbook's not going to be able to tell you the answers. It might help you, but you need to really be attuned to them, don't you? So I love that.
Yeah.
Now, I was thinking we probably should have spoken about this with tummy time, but we're going to talk about it now. Hey mamas, Laura here. Now, whether you have a crawling baby now or are getting prepared ahead of time for this milestone, I really hope you got a lot out of that episode. And for those that may still be concerned about the ways in which your child crawls, I have personally known a bum shuffler and a skip straight to walking baby, and both of them are athletic, coordinated, and very strong individuals. So please don't stress. Now, I also thought it was important that Nicole mentioned it is okay to let our children get a little bit frustrated sometimes, and that it's important to acknowledge the level of frustration that we feel most comfortable with as parents. Now, if you'd like to learn more from Nicole, you can find her on Instagram at Nicole_Kids Physio. And as always, I would love to hear from you over on my socials at PhysioLaura, and let me know what your favorite learning was from this episode, and if you had a non-traditional crawler with any of your children. Now, in the next few episodes of this Kids Physio series, we will be chatting with Nicole about baby carriers and whether or not baby toys and activity centers are helpful or harmful for your child's development. And if you haven't already, just subscribe to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast so that you don't miss out upcoming episodes in this wonderful Kids Physio series. And if you loved today's episode and you want to watch the next 2 episodes in this Kids Physio series, you can find this entire series along with all our other podcast series live right now inside the Pregnancy Posse. So for most series of the podcast, we also record the exclusive bonus content for Pregnancy Posse members. And in the bonus member-only episode for this Kids Physio series, Nicole shares with us 4 bonus videos which demonstrate play-based ideas for babies aged 0 to 3 months. And remember, inside the Pregnancy Posse, you'll also find our weekly guided pregnancy workouts and extensive resources library on things like birth preparation, pelvic floor exercises, and managing pelvic pain, plus a wonderful community forum and weekly Q&A sessions with me. I would love to help you have a wonderful pregnancy, birth, and postnatal experience. So just visit thepregnancyposse.com to see what the Pregnancy Posse is all about. I will catch you soon for episode 4 in this 5-part Kids Physio series, where we'll be chatting all about baby carriers, which is a topic I get asked about almost every day. So until then, mamas, sending you wonderful pregnancy vibes and enjoy the incredible journey that is pregnancy.